Foundations patch number 4 is coming really soon, and it's going to change everything in terms of meta in Albion Online. We're going to look at all of the combat balance changes in this video. And bro, hold on to your seats. If you have been using meta stuff for the past 6, 7, 8, 9 months, be ready to change some of your builds, because this is going to disrupt the meta, and people have been asking for meta changes for a while now. But this is wild, and we're going to look at it every single step of the way. Let's look at this. All right. So just a quick change here. Resilience amount is no longer displayed as a buff. No one really cares about that. Okay, let's move on to the combat balance changes on the Crossbow. On the Crossbow, the Divine Energy on the Energy Shaper is getting a buff. Channel time is from 4 seconds to 3.3 seconds. The number of ticks is going to be from 13 to 11. And the damage per tick is going to be from 80 to 96. For players, 26 to 57. Actually, almost double that. Actually, more than doubled for the mobs. Okay, so this has been, if you have been living under a rock, Energy Shaper has been used for ZVZs. And they are buffing this, making it so that it's not more of a sustained, little bit of a burst there, like 0.7 seconds. It's still going to be, I would say, subpar when it comes to ZVZ. But I think it's a really good buff though. I think we're going to see more and more Energy Shapers come back to ZVZ situations. And if you have seen some of the cheese videos with the Heretic Cape, like the Puddle Silence and the Graveguard Helmet, or no, Graveguard Armor in Corrupted Dungeons, this is actually going to be really fun. I would want to see more Corrupted Dungeons. I would want to see more Energy Shapers cheese in Corrupted Dungeons, because this is such a good buff. Less channel time, higher number of damage per tick, and lesser ticks. So this is actually pretty good. Basically, I would say the same amount of damage in a shorter period of time. Let's move on to the Quarterstaff, the Dark Matter on all Quarterstaff. Similar idea here, number of ticks from 10 to 8. Damage per tick versus players, 78 to 98. If you guys didn't know what the Dark Matter is, if you go to your Quarterstaff, this is actually one of the least used, I would say, obviously in solo, in 2v2. I don't know if this is being used in any other content, but Dark Matter basically is the one that jumps from one player to another, dealing damage. So it is going to jump less, but it's going to deal more. So I don't know what content this is actually used for. I want to say small scale, but the Armor Piercer is significantly better because you help everyone else, not just you dealing damage. So I don't know if this is going to change much, to be honest with you, because I think Armor Piercer is still the play if you're going to go small scale or ZVZ. No one really uses like the Dark Matter. But yeah, it's an interesting change for the Quarterstaff. Maybe another option for the W ability, but we shall see. On the Daggers, the lunging stabs on the Bloodletter, also known as the Execute. The lunging stab, the Execute skill, cooldown reduction when hitting a player below 40% health is now 40 to 50. Okay, so this might actually cause some confusion. Let's go to Bloodletter combat. And apparently I have 100 specs in Bloodletter. I don't know why. All right, let's look at Bloodletter. This is hitting at least one enemy below 40% will reduce its ability cooldown by 40%. So there are two 40% here. Okay, if you hit an enemy below 40%, that is still going to determine your damage. If your enemy's health is above 40%, you are going to deal 592 damage on a tier 6. That's still going to be the same. Below 40%, you're going to deal more damage. That's going to still be the same. But your reduction on skills will be from 40% to 50%. So it's going to be the last part. You are still going to be, that if is still going to be 40%, but your cooldown reduction will be 50% if you hit an enemy below 40%. So that may cause a little bit of confusion there, but that's what it means. Because the cooldown is going to be increased from 30 seconds to 35 seconds. So this Bloodletter has always been used in the Mist. One of the more popular, I would say, Mist weapons in the game right now. It's really good because you can reset whenever you want. But now, Lunging Stab has a 35-second cooldown if you don't hit an enemy below 40%. I think that is a nerf enough to maybe knock the Bloodletter down a tad. I think Bloodletter is still going to be really good, especially for ratting playstyle. But for straight up brawl and trying to run away, it's probably not for like lower tiers. But I think for like higher tier weapons, still the damage still there. The mobility on your W still there. You still have the dash. You still have the shadow edge. You still have the deadly swipe. So you're still mobile. So it's going to knock it down just a little bit. Just a little bit of a nerf there. But I think it's still going to be one of the best for the Mist. This has been a long time coming. The Fire Staff, the Pyroblast on the one-handed Fire Staffs, finally getting a nerf, but This is basically a slap on the wrist. The Fire Staff has been meta in the Corrupted Dungeons, Stalker specifically, for a very long time now. I am a one-hand Fire Staff main, and I have been calling for this to be nerfed for a while now. I really don't think this is going to change it that much. A 5% nerf up here, it's an nerf. I still think they need to nerf this more. The one-hand Fire Staff E. I still think it's going to be, I want to say, between S tier and A tier. We're going to call that probably like A plus meta. This 10 damage base, by the way. 10 damage base. This is a 14 damage base. This is that 18 damage base nerf. It's not really going to affect it that much. Your Q3, if you look at this, look at the Fire Staff. Your Q3 still deals a lot of damage. Your Q3's Furious Flame deals 658 plus dots, and also it's equivalent to the Quick Cast E. And most of the time, right? Most of the time when you're using the Fire Staffs anyways, you want to use Quick Cast E. So you're getting, honestly, a 5% nerf. Not that much. I can still see the Fire Staffs being used in Corrupted Dungeons. They need to do more to nerf the Fire Staff, at least for Stalker Corrupted Dungeons. Alright, for the hammers, the Grasp of the Undead on the Tome Hammer. Additional hit point reduction, 10%. Hit point reduction duration, 3 seconds. So, if you look at the Tome Hammer right now, Tome Hammer, this is the skill. So, it stuns you, right? Deals damage. And now they're going to introduce a new effect. Added hit point reduction 10% and the hit point reduction duration of 3 seconds. So not that much, right? Think of this as how the Realm Breaker works. So the Realm Breaker is damage, throws you in the air, and max current health reduction by 10%, 15% for 5 seconds. So I'm assuming it's the same hit point reduction. It's going to be like the Realm Breaker. Does anyone actually use Tome Hammer? Nadzuri does very effectively. Super good. All right, moving on to the Quarterstaffs. There has been some changes for this one. And double-bladed staff users, please cover your eyes and ears and get some tissue. The stun run on all of the Quarterstaffs. Move speed buff now ends upon auto attack. The stun run on all Quarterstaffs, usually when they use this, right? When they stun, it's usually they execute their combo right away. They do stand still after the stun run. But this is a good nerf. When they use the stun run, your buff on the movement speed just is no longer there. It's not going to affect most of the combos that I know of in 1v1, 2v2, and all that. Not really, because most of the time, they stun, use their combo, they're standing still anyways. They're not utilizing that mobility. So yeah, there's that. Rising below on all of the quarterstaffs, cooldown reduction per player hit is 12% to 15%, stacks up to 15 times. So let's look at the quarterstaffs real quick. Quarterstaff fighter. Let's look at the double-bladed staff, which is going to be nerfed. All right, rising blow. Hit all enemies in a cone in front of you, throwing them up in the air for 1 second. Deals damage. For every enemy player hit, the cooldown is reduced by 12%. So I don't know who uses this, honestly. It can get you up to 45% cooldown reduction now, which 15 base is could be like 8 seconds. Every 8 seconds, you knock them up in the air with a little bit of a damage, but you know, it's a good buff. I don't think that is going to make anyone happy, but it's a good buff. The separator on all the quarterstaff as well now deals 80 damage to all untargeted enemies. This is the separator. Attacks a targeted enemy, dealing 500 damage. Roots them for 4.01 seconds. Untargeted enemy players within the 6 meter radius around it will be knocked back 12 meters. Untargeted mobs will be thrown up in the air for 0.6. So you're going to deal damage again. 80 damage is okay. You know, you're buffing it a little bit, but not enough to change anything from like the playstyle of most of the players. The soaring swipe, this is though on the double-bladed staff, will get a nerf in terms of the cooldown. The cooldown now is 20 seconds. It's going to be 25. The cooldown right now is 20 seconds. They're going to nerf it to 25 seconds. But hitting a player now reduces the ability's cooldown by 20%. Essentially, if you hit a player, your cooldown is still 20 seconds. Because 20% of 25, hopefully my math is mathing here, is 5 seconds. If you hit an enemy, your cooldown is still 20 seconds. This is a huge nerf, I think, because players tend to use the quarterstaffs in the mist, especially the double-bladed staff, because they have a lot of mobility. Now, they don't really have that option because they have to hit a player. 25 seconds with that range is still really good. But in the first place, the double-bladed staff doesn't really have a lot of damage. It has good range when it comes to like the ability to jump off, right, at 15 meters. But I think this is a good enough nerf for us to see significantly less double-bladed staffs in the mist. It's still going to be used for transports, I think. Still going to be used for potentially like ganking in a group. But I don't think this is going to be meta anymore in the mist unless you bring an awakened weapon with high cooldown reduction rate. I think this is going to be the death of the double-bladed staff. But, you know, to all mist players out there, let me know in the comment section below what you all think. Because I think it's dead. Honestly, I think it's dead. All right, moving on to another meta shifting nerf. The Shapeshifters staffs is also going to receive a nerf, especially the Q4 ability on all Shapeshifter staffs. The Pulse Shock reduced damage from 124 to 109. That is huge. That is actually a huge nerf because let's look at all the Shapeshifter staffs. If I can spell, that'd be great. Shapeshifter. Let's look at Q4. This is the Q4. The Pulse Shock deals damage, decreases damage resistance up to 3 times. Each hit applies 1 shift charge up to 2 times. Cooldown of 4 seconds. That is huge. If you have been using Shapeshifter staffs in 2v2 Hellgates, or maybe summons like small scale, this is actually really huge because the damage on this is that decreases their damage resistance, right? Applies the damage. Now they're being nerfed. They are nerfing the Q4 by 12%. That is honestly a game changer. I would want to see how players react to them actually. I would actually want to see players react on how nerfed it is, especially in 2v2 Hellgates, especially the Hellspawn staff, because it deals a lot of damage. But with the Pulse Shock being nerfed like this, Nomad Poncho, also a streamer you have to check out, said something about not using Q4 like about a couple of days ago, about using the Distortion and the fourth passive, which increases your cast speed by 30% for 5 seconds, and using Q1. Q1 basically is like the Q1 of the Fire Staff as well. 0.8 seconds cast time, deals damage as well to whoever is like behind them. Less than ideal, I would say. Maybe they all switch to Q2 because it does still deal damage. 2 seconds, 0.4 cast time, potentially. Because Q4 has always been like the go-to. Has always been the go-to for players in 2v2 situations because of just how ridiculous the damage is. But now that is going to be nerfed. I would want to see how they react. Maybe Q2. Maybe Q2 still on the innate power. Maybe we'll see this as well. Whenever you hit an enemy with a Q ability in human form, decreases their damage by 3% for 7 seconds. Or again, as Nomad Poncho says, maybe Q1 passive 4 on W1. So there's definitely going to be some changes when it comes to how shapeshifters are used. Again, the theme of all of this is just meta shift. Shift all the meta, see how players react, and we are going to get some new meta. The Tectonic Shift on Earth Rune Staff. Hit point reduction from 15% to 10%. Again, Earth Rune. Let's look at Earth Rune. Earth Rune. Tectonic Shift. I believe this is it. This is the second Tectonic Slam, actually. So we go Tectonic Shift, pulls the enemies, and the Tectonic Slam is what's going to get the nerf. Max and current health of all enemies within it is now reduced 10% instead of 15%. So it's a little bit of a nerf there. Moving on to the spears, the harpoon. On all of the spears, the max range is going to be from 18% to 20%, and the projectile speed is 23.33 to 23.53. So 0.2 meters per second buff on the projectile speed. Max range is 20. With the fire staff getting nerfed and the harpoon getting buffed, I would want to see all of the spears out there. If you switch to the harpoon, it's going to be a really good day for fire staffs. You are still going to use, I think, the deflecting spin. I don't think the harpoon against range is going to be that effective. Not, at least not with the fire staff. It's just too easy to counter. If you have harpoons, too easy to actually like dodge. And even if you do actually hit it, you are better off with the deflecting spin, honestly. But hey, spears, harpoon, maybe against frost staffs, maybe against bows. You have a slightly faster speed there. Max range is increased, so there's that. Rejoice, rejoice. Now let's move on to the nerf that will make all new players cry. The spinning blades on the dual swords. They have now buried it 12 feet under. Not 6 feet. 12 feet under. They have now removed the 50% attack speed buff on the dual swords. This has always been the selling point of dual swords. At least for a lot of players, I think. Let's look at the tier 6. I wanna showcase something. After hitting at least one enemy when you jump, auto attack speed increased by 50%, which is what makes the dual swords actually really good. Increases your physical auto attack damage as well by 100 for 3 seconds. So that is where it's at. You increase your attack speed, you increase your attack damage for 3 seconds. You basically double your attack damage. Now it's going to be up to 4 seconds. The physical attack damage buff. You are still going to be immune to all crowd control effects until you land. You still hit that damage for 675. but you no longer have that auto attack speed buff. You are still, however, going to potentially get that auto attack speed buff for 36% on 3 stacks. And the good thing about dual swords is that when you use your E, it doesn't actually use your stacks. So you still have the 36% on 3 stacks. But I think this is it. We have seen the dual sword in the meta for a while now. I think longer than the fire staff. I think this is it. This is the death of the dual sword, even with the attack speed. I mean, maybe if you pair it with like a hunter jacket to compensate for that speed buff reduction, I don't know. I think it's dead. I think it's just dead. You still have the carving sword though for the mist, but like this for corrupted dungeons, I think it's dead. They did recently buff the Claymore just a tad, so you can maybe switch the Claymore instead of a dual sword, but I don't know. Decisions. All right, let's move on to the helmets. The immortality on the Mistwalker hood. One of my favorite skills right now. It's just insane. Being immortal for 6 seconds is just, honestly, yeah, the potential of this. But they are balancing it. I want to call this a balance because they did buff the cooldown from 30 seconds to 25 seconds, but they decreased the duration from 6 seconds to 5 seconds. So you just have to be more aware of like how you use or when actually you use your Mistwalker hood, because the cooldown is decreased by 5 seconds, but the duration is also decreased by 1 second. So 1 second there might mean life or death, but I think 6 seconds to 5 seconds, still very usable. It just, you have to hold on to that Mistwalker hood skill just a little longer. Maybe you have been using it at 20%. Maybe this time use it at around 10%, 15%. Just have to hold on to it just a little longer. And the cooldown is now at 25. So I think this is a good balance for the helmet. I think I would call this, it's a little bit of a, I don't want to call this a nerf or a buff, because with the immortality helmet, especially in corrupted dungeons, you only use it once anyways. So the cooldown isn't really that big of a deal. But maybe in, say, the mist, where you use it, you pop maybe like a demon boots to escape or deal more damage, the cooldown there might have a little bit more significance. But in corrupted dungeons, I would say it's a bit of a nerf, but overall I would say it's a balance. Now, lastly, for the shoes. The after image on the Mistwalker shoes, the first cast cooldown is 15 seconds to 12 seconds. If you don't know what the Mistwalker shoes does, it's basically a dash and a dash back. If you dash, just the first one, you don't use the second one, it's going to just be 12 seconds. So if you're just using it as a blink, 12 seconds. If you blink back, I do believe they have like an extra. But yeah, that is the Mistwalker. Just a little bit of a buff, just a little bit. This is actually really interesting. I like this a lot. The Royal Boots, the Royal March. If you guys don't know about this boots, this is one of the boots that people use to compensate for really low mobility. So like fire staffs, right? Fire staffs in the mist, you will see them use this most of the time because it actually is really, really good. You march ever so slowly for 2.5 seconds max. And if you do that, you are going to basically move faster, 90% max for 8 seconds. Comparing it to the normal ones, which is 80% buff over 5 seconds, this is move slow for 2.5 seconds, get 90% buff now, movement speed, for 8 seconds. So this is actually a really good buff. This is a huge buff. So you'll see more Royal Boots. It's fairly easy to counter. You just like, if you don't get that 2.5 seconds of marching, you don't get the boost. So it's actually a really good buff, especially for builds that have relatively low mobility in the mist. So there you go, rejoice. So that's basically it for this patch. It's still on the test server, so nothing really is official yet. But holy crap, they listened. Players have been complaining about, oh, the meta hasn't changed for a year. Firestaff is this, Bloodletter is that, Shapeshifter is that, and some more. SBI finally listened and they were like, you know what? We're going to nerf everything. They nerfed the Bloodletter, they nerfed the Firestaff, they nerfed the double-bladed staff, they nerfed the Shapeshifter staffs, they nerfed the swords. And they were like, what now, B? What now? This is exciting times, honestly. This is exciting time. For me personally, this could have not come in a more perfect time. I've been starting to switch over to the Frost Staff with the Mistwalker hood. So, I think it's a good day. For Fire Staff users, don't really. That's okay. It's okay. Not a big of a nerf. It's okay. What do you guys think of all of the nerfs? Let me know in the comment section below, or better yet, join us live on Twitch at twitch.tv/birdzone.